Hello, beautiful people. It can be really lonely and really uncomfortable going from being a soul or identifying as a soul to beingness. This transition is huge. And I want to tell you a little story. I remember I was in a training. It's a body of work called Access Consciousness. And I remember doing their foundations course. And so much shift was happening. There was so much processing, so many just aha moments, and just literal energetic shifts and releases the whole weekend. And then at the end of the day, the whole training, I remember going up to someone who had been through this training before, and I started to kind of critique it. I started to, which I do. I'm a Jersey girl. I critique everything. I kind of pick everything apart. I remember going in and picking apart the training, and the person in front of me said, "Pause. You know, sometimes when we create more space for ourselves, we go into old habits that are comfortable, and we start kind of picking around and going to some old habits." She's like, what if you could just be comfortable and just be with the space that you just created for yourself? And woo, which brings me to the topic today. When we are going from an identified soul into gradually becoming this beingness, we're becoming more space, and we're identifying less with any definition or form or structure. So the definition of a soul is a structure. The definition that a soul has karma and has chakras and has past lives, that's all a construct and a definition, a form, and a structure. And so as we go from identifying as a soul to beingness, which is just being our allness with awareness and infinite beingness, and letting go of past lives, letting go of karma, letting go of form and structure, there's just space. And it is really uncomfortable. There's nothing, when there's space, think about being in outer space, right? You're just floating. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. And honestly, it can be really, really lonely. Have you ever felt lonely and depressed and unmotivated or uninspired to create, and feeling like you're in this abyss, but you're not exactly sure why or what's happening? You've done tons of personal growth work. You feel like you've had a spiritual awakening. You have broader perspectives. And perhaps, if you're like me, you had a view that this might be different at this point in the game. Like you might feel more knowing or more psychic or more whatever. And yet here it is. Another dark night of the soul? How can this be? I've let go. I don't even identify as that anymore. Let me know in the comments. Can anyone relate to that? I have felt like that on and off a lot lately, and coming out of it feels really good, but it does bring a little loneliness on, but a different type of loneliness. It's almost like a grieving of an old way. And it's gonna be okay, because in this phase I'm in now, it's like there's grieving, there's loneliness, but I'm not lonely. It's hard to explain, because I'm so connected to beingness and the allness that being with myself is fine. But it's a little lonely because, sometimes it's hard to find people to hang out with that get that space. So I really enjoy my own company these days. So loneliness, I think, a phase of grieving and letting go of your old paradigm, of old programming, of a karmic system, of the chakra map, of everything that tries to categorize you, that tries to figure you out. Like there's tons of maps, right? There's astrological maps, there's psychological maps, there's soul maps, there's our human brain, and our awareness tries to, box everything in. And as we unhook, and as we have ego death after ego death after ego death, and maybe it's defined as, your kundalini rising, and it's shedding all these roles and definitions of yourself, there's more space for beingness. And just like in my story, it's like, would you be willing to be in the discomfort of you having more space for you? And it is uncomfortable. But instead of reacting from that, maybe with reacting with emotion, or reacting into going back into like old comfortable patterns or ways of eating or ways of relating, or what if we just be with it without analyzing it, without like kind of ripping it apart, or ripping your path apart. That's another thing that's common, trying to fit pieces together and take pieces apart. And what if we didn't do any of that? We just were willing to be present with the space that we created for ourselves, and that what we felt called and a longing to. So wherever we are on the trajectory of our awakening and ascension, we're feeling this pull and this call from different aspects of ourselves, aspects that have evolved to that space, and that space, and that space, and that space. And then we keep integrating ourselves. And eventually we are just working from our sovereign source self, which is like so much space, no definition. And it's really uncomfortable for another reason too, because like there's a part of our awakening process where we start having all this awareness. We feel like we're guided, right? And we are, because there's all these aspects of our higher self that's kind of cheerleading us on and bringing us this way and bringing us this way. But there's a time in our awakening that we've almost transcended these aspects of ourselves. So the voices decrease, and there are no more voices except for your own at source. And it's really uncomfortable, because it's like you got offline, like the internet got turned off and you're offline. You can feel like that. My recommendation would just to kind of just feel your energy do this and create a direct line to your source self. And beingness is all about this knowingness that you get to have now. And it's quicker and less of the world, and less judgment, and less particular. It's less particular. So what happens is, like all the aspects of yourself, they're guiding you to a higher frequency in your awakening process, but they still have a little bit of an agenda. So as we clear all the agendas, when we connect with our sovereign source, there's not a lot of agenda. And when there's not a lot of agenda, we stop feeling super intuitive and psychic. We perhaps stop seeing or hearing, or in a psychic way. And it can feel pretty blank. It can feel pretty spacious. There is that poem, that Christian poem, where is footprints in the sand. I really love that image, because it's like, it was when you were having your hardest time that I was carrying you, even though you only saw one footprint. And it's just like, what if that's it? What if you've integrated all of yourself, and you've really just come into your source self? So instead of all the different imprints, and then the clairvoyant, clairsentient, clara, all the claras, all of that's integrated into one capacity of knowingness of your infinite beingness as a source being. And the magic of being that is that you create in the present moment. And in the past, going through other phases of the awakening process, we tend to create sometimes from the past, or we're creating into the future. But in this awakening process, as you start to realize, the past and the present and the future are all one. So all we have is present. And we get to tap into the spaciousness of our knowingness in this present moment. And then this present moment. And then this present moment. So this wobbliness of feeling lonely and disconnected, and it's your ego, it's your person and your soul trying to make its last grip on you. Okay? And let go, unclench the fist of that, and say it's okay. And what's required for that is a lot of trust. A lot of trust. A lot of surrendering into yourself, not surrendering in white flag of okay, I give up kind of thing, but surrendering in to the sea of source, which is you. And again, this can be a wobbly experience. So if you've been doing a lot of personal growth work, you've done a lot of spiritual journeying, you've walked the path, and all of a sudden you're like, how did I get here again? How am I so lonely, depressed, and dejected, and feeling like this wobble? How this doesn't make sense. I feel so blank and disconnected from myself. And in reality, you are not disconnected from yourself. You've actually integrated yourself. And think about this. When there's contrast, right? When you get out of a pool, you're warm. When you get out of the air's colder, there's that contrast. Like, ooh. Well, what's happening with our awakening journey and our ascension journey is that we're decreasing the contrast and the polarity. There's not as much contrast, so we don't feel it so distinctly. And that can be scary for the ego and for the roles we're playing in our life, and for the construct we have in a physical body. Hold on, be patient with yourself, sit in the present moment, knowing that all the work that you've done, all the spiritual play, all the opening up to your light body has paid off. You are now turning into a being rather than an individualized soul. And just bask in the space of that beingness. And now your awareness starts to shift too. The awareness starts to come from your knowingness in the present moment, not foretelling futures or agendas or things like that. There's a map in yoga called the 5 koshas, and this is really cool. So the contrast between your spirit beingness and intuition, okay, is this intuition, this wisdom body is trying to tell you when you've lost the perspective that you are a spirit, you are a beingness. So when we talk about growing intuition, we're growing that voice that tells us we are here. We really are this. Now, we don't need the intuition if we are this. if we know in our deepest being that we are connected, we are source energy. We are a source self, and we just know that, then we use our intuition less and less, and we use our knowing more and more. Now, the way this 5-step system works is that, so here's your bliss body, here's your spirit body, here's your beingness. And when we leave the perspective that we are this, our intuition tries to kick in and say, hey. But if we're not trained to hear this voice, there's the voice of the emotions and the thought patterns, okay? and they let us know. And that's where emotions and thoughts become tools to let us know, hey, you've left the building of your bliss body. And when we don't hear that, our energetic body of the chakras and the nadis and the meridians all kick in to let us know, hey, we're getting clogged up because you left the perspective of your beingness. And then lastly, our body lets us know with physical symptoms. But guys, if we have awakened to the perspective that we are a source sovereign being, then the intuition, right? The intuition and the energy bodies of the chakras and the intuition of like the clairvoyancy and stuff like that, they're not really that active because we are here in infinite beingness. And our awareness tool is going to be knowing, okay? Intuition layer is the claras, right? The emotion level and the belief systems, old programming, emotional intelligence. That's what's our tool. Awareness tool is going to be there. Energy systems, being aware of chakras and stuck energy. That's going to be there. Being aware of our body, tracking pain, tracking sensation and tightness. These are all awareness tools that are really important to have along our journey. And during our awakening journey now, if we play here more often, we're going to have less of these happening, these signs that give us information, because we don't require them anymore. We have our knowing. But this requires that we stay very, very present. And when we don't stay present and we leave this, the intuition will kick in. So it's a really cool system, isn't it? The 5 koshas really gives us this really cool 5-step system of remembering our greatness, remembering who we really are, remembering from the amnesia, the swiped amnesia that happens when we're born into a body. So it's so normal to feel uncomfortable and lonely and dejected and depressed after you've done tons of spiritual and personal growth work, because when you go from intuition to knowingness, it's a lot of space to be in. And it's a lot of processing a different way of being. So be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself and know that you will get more comfortable with this way. And try not to go into old habits of analyzing things and giving things forms and structures, because now you are in a space of formlessness. And that is tricky because you are playing in a form-based reality. So this is the conundrum of the modern mystic and modern ascension, is how do I have this modern this perspective of I am a source being, I have my sovereign connection, and I'm in a physical body. And our bodies are trying to catch up vibrationally too to all of this. So when we are willing to have this just awareness and knowingness, have fun with it. Be playful. Learn how to be in your new space of being. And that means just being all of you. Just guide your life by lightness. If it feels light, go there. If it starts to contract you and you feel old habits and stuff come in, that's perhaps a choice you might not want to go down. But we all still have choice, right? So there's a little tool I want to give you, and it's an access consciousness tool. And this is what's right and light about this that I may not be getting. So we're used to having our intuition, right? We're used to having our guides give us information. So instead of that, you get to have questions and have your awareness. So asking open-ended questions like, what's right and light about this that I'm not getting? When you're sitting there in loneliness and depression and just feeling super uncomfortable in your skin, ask the question, what's right and light about this that I'm not getting? And just sit presently with yourself, and you may notice that there's a sense of relief that comes to you. There might be some words that come come to you. And you might be drawn to go do something. So beautiful, people. I hope this was helpful. This is my journey as well that I'm going through as well, and it actually helps to talk about it. So thanks for listening if you got to this part of the video, and please join the tribe, subscribe and click the bell, and I will see you this week with another video. Namaste.